Why is it such a big deal to break your silence and tell your story? Hey everybody, it is Jo. I am back today on Trauma Talk. I wanted to talk today about an issue that is really near and dear to my heart, about breaking the silence. Why is it important to tell your story? Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence is an organization that I talked about before. I love them. They do fantastic things for survivors of domestic violence and victims who are trying to get out of dangerous situations. And this year, they are trying to inspire and help 100,000 survivors tell their story throughout 2018. Why is it such a big deal to break your silence and tell your story? I think that there are a lot of answers to this, but the biggest one, at least for me, is that death grows in silence. And I'm not just talking about physical death, I'm talking about mental and emotional death. During my abuse, I didn't talk about it. I didn't think about it. I shoved it down. I pushed it to the side. I thought, this is not a big deal. I'm making this up. Everyone deals with this. It's probably my fault. The list of reasons I didn't talk about it is long and is for most people who have undergone trauma. There was a really pivotal moment in my story, and I truly believe this is the only reason I am alive today and talking to you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Right after I was sexually assaulted for the last time and left that relationship. I hadn't actually left it yet. This was kind of the beginning of leaving it. My mom knew something was really wrong because I had talked to her earlier in the day, and she mentioned to my brother something was wrong. Now, during this day, after this happened, because it happened in the morning, I had all kinds of thoughts going through my head. I knew something was really wrong. I knew I was not okay. I felt like there was like a literal tearing inside of me. Part of me was screaming and dying, and part of me was like, everything's fine, that was my fault, it was a misunderstanding, no blah blah blah. I was leaning towards silencing the screaming and listening to all of the silencing that was going on in my head. But my mom told my brother I didn't seem okay, and so he called me at about 10 o'clock that night and just asked me if I was all right, what was going on. And in that moment, I decided if anyone was safe in my life to tell, because I really didn't trust anyone, that my brother was that person. And so I went on a huge limb and told him really basic details of what had occurred. And he said, "Jordan, did he rape you?" And I was like, "I have no idea, I don't know what's going on, it was probably my fault." I just kind of freaked out, and he was like, "I'm coming over." And so he drove 5 hours in the middle of the night to come to my house and stay with me for a couple days. I know if he had not called me, I would never have said anything, because I knew myself well enough at that time to know that I would have continued silencing, I would have continued pushing down the abuse, I would have continued blaming myself, and I would have eventually ended my life, because I was in such a bad, dark place where my self-esteem was continually being broken down, where my mind was being bent and broken and manipulated to death, where I was being spiritually abused, and where I was just not okay. But if I didn't talk about it, I couldn't find any help. I couldn't find any resources, and there was no way I could deal with that alone. I had to start telling my story, as difficult as that was. The problem with keeping things silent, keeping things in darkness, is that these lies grow. All those voices that tell you you don't deserve any better, no one will ever love you or take care of you, they're the only person who really cares about you even though they hurt you, this is all your fault, this is all you're worthy of, or maybe it was all a misunderstanding, you shouldn't say anything, you don't want to get them in trouble, you don't want to ruin their life. All of those excuses grow when we don't speak them aloud, and it is terrifying to tell your story the first time, and it is a little less terrifying to tell your story the second time. And it gets less and less and less and less, and it is still scary for me sometimes. And I'm talking about it on camera, but it is so worth it, because you find this community of people who understand. Sometimes people react well, sometimes they don't. But one avenue, if you are interested in telling your story, is contacting Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. They can help you in whatever way it is that you want to tell your story, whether it's talking to an advocate or just talking to someone else who gets it, someone who understands. Maybe it's joining an online support forum and just typing out your story for the first time. Whatever that is, I can't encourage you enough to break the silence and to put what you've gone through into words, whatever words you can manage, because that is the first step. When we keep things inside, they fester and they grow and they tear us up and they destroy us. And I know for me, though it may not be true for you, if I had not spoken out what had happened to me, not only would I have continued in that abusive relationship and gone back to him over and over again, I know, knowing myself at that time in my life, I know that I would have ended up committing suicide because my self-worth was so low and was just being knocked down and knocked down and knocked down. I didn't have any way to make sense of this world that was being twisted around me. But when I reached out and when I started talking to people, things started becoming clearer bit by tiny little bit. In the description of this video, I have put resources to break the silence against domestic violence, to R.A.I.N, to a forum that I have found really helpful, and also to a Facebook support group that I've also found really helpful. Maybe consider joining one of them or calling them or messaging them. They have all been really helpful to me personally, and maybe they can be to you too. Please know that you are not alone. Please know that your story is so worth telling. And please know that if you choose to break the silence, it can be an incredible and powerful step towards healing in your life and growth and moving towards a better life for yourself, which is so much what you deserve because you are worth so much. This is Trauma Talk. I am Jo Beckwith. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know in the comments or message me directly. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.